On June 22, 2021, traffic was heavy along the busy Thika Road. Cars slowed near Spur Mall to a near standstill, horns blaring as commuters inched forward. A white Subaru Forester moved with the flow as a man whistled inside. Then, a motorbike pulled up. Two men, calm, precise. In seconds, the silence shattered. 24 bullets ripped through the Subaru on the driver's side. He suddenly slumped and the car rolled to a stop. This was not random. This was not chance. It was an execution. The man behind the wheel was Daniel Gacumo Ndutire. To some, he was a car dealer from Thika, a businessman, and a father of four. To police, he was Nairobi's most wanted robber, a man with a trail of cases, warrants, and unfinished trials. A man who lived freely even as courts demanded his presence. A man whose family, his wife, his mother, were themselves entangled in crime. So who was Daniel Gacumo? How did he rise from a village boy to a feared gang leader? And why did his life end in a hail of bullets on a busy highway in broad daylight? Hello, and welcome to Dark Hour Docs, where we uncover the darkest crimes, the unanswered questions, and the shadows that refuse to fade. Tonight, we peel back the layers. We look into the story of Daniel and his tragic ending. Daniel Gacumo Ndutire was born in Kiambu County and raised in Juja, a town that was growing fast, filled with ambition, and brimming with opportunity. In his early years, he was just another boy in the neighborhood, a child whose future seemed open, undefined, and full of possibility. But as time passed, the path he chose, or perhaps the path that chose him, would lead him into shadows that few could escape. By his mid-30s, Daniel had carved out a reputation as a vehicle dealer in Thika. He sold cars, moved in business circles, and lived a life that looked polished from the outside. Friends described him as kind and generous, a man who spent freely in clubs across Juja, Thika, and Ruru. Dropping 20,000 shillings in a single night was nothing to him. He entertained friends, bought drinks, and carried himself with the confidence of someone untouchable. To his family, he was a father of four. To his community, he was admired by some, feared by others. Because behind the image of a businessman was a man with a shadow, long, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. And that shadow was not his alone. His family, too, was tied to crime. To make matters worse, his wife, Susan Wangare Njoroge, had just been arrested a month earlier for stealing a Toyota Harrier. Armed with a gun and impersonating a police officer, she stopped Cyrus Kogi on Riara Road, roughed him up with accomplices, and stole his car. She thought she had gotten away after changing the registration number, but the flying squad tracked the vehicle to Wayaki Way. She was arrested, charged, and freed on a 500,000 shilling bail. Police officers, staring at Daniel's record and his wife's arrest, wondered aloud, were they not afraid of the law? Or were they simply cursed thieves, destined to walk the same dark road together? Daniel's criminal record stretched back years, and police files had painted him as a certified robber. His name had long been mentioned in police files, whispered in court corridors, and scribbled across warrants that never seemed to catch up with him. For investigators, Daniel was not just another suspect. He was a man who had perfected the art of slipping through the cracks of justice. His record stretched back years, and each entry told the story of a man who lived dangerously. Often he thrived in the shadows, and always somehow managed to stay one step ahead of the police. The first major entry in his criminal career came in June of 2014 at Santone in Wiki, Kasarani area. Together with his accomplice, Stephen Kamau Mangai, Daniel and his accomplices orchestrated a robbery that shocked the community. Their target was businessman Patrick Kariuki Ndutati. In a single sweep, they stripped him of his livelihood. They robbed him in Isuzu lorry, 300 gas cylinders, 117,000 shillings in cash, and 2 mobile phones. It was a bold strike, and it did not go unnoticed. Police would move quickly, arresting Daniel and charging him at the Makadara law courts. For a moment, it seemed justice had caught up. However, he was released on a hefty bail of 500,000 shillings, but instead of facing trial, Daniel vanished. He jumped bail, ignored summons, and left the courts issuing warrant after warrant. None were executed. The case collapsed, and Daniel walked free. However, his reputation would continue to grow darker with each passing day. Barely a year later, in July 2015, his name surfaced again. This time, Daniel has been tied to a robbery that carried the hallmarks of audacity and deception. Daniel and his gang dressed themselves in police uniforms, a disguise that gave them authority and cover. They blocked a lorry loaded with laptops, clothes, and mobile phones worth an estimated 60 million shillings. It was a staggering haul, and when police traced the stolen goods, they found them not in some hidden warehouse, but at Daniel's own family home in Ritho Village, Kiambu. The raid led to the arrest of his mother, Mary Wanjiku, and his wife, Susan Wangare. Both would later be charged with handling stolen property. For investigators, it was proof that crime ran deep in the family. But Daniel himself? He was nowhere to be found. Once again, he had slipped away, leaving others to face the consequences. By 2017, his name had become synonymous with high-stakes robberies. On March the same year, 6 men arrived at Supreme Equity Bank in Eldoret, driving 3 saloon cars. They looked like ordinary customers, and the police officers guarding the bank relaxed, unaware of the storm about to break. In a flash, the men overpowered the guards, disarmed them of their AK-47 rifles, and stormed inside. Cashiers and customers were ordered to surrender their phones, a tactic meant to cut off communication. But one security officer, despite being subdued, managed to send a distress call. Within minutes, sirens would wail across Eldoret in an attempt to halt an ongoing robbery. Panic spread. The robbers fled, leading police on a chase that ended at Chepteret Market along the Eldoret-Nakuru Highway. 3 suspects were arrested, 3 guns recovered, and a Toyota Harrier with fake plates seized. When cops interrogated the suspects, they gave away the identity of their master planner as Mr. Daniel Gacumo, shocking the cops into oblivion. At the time, Daniel had an active arrest warrant. Yet again, Daniel's name surfaced as the mastermind, and yet again, he escaped, leaving others to carry the weight of the failed heist. Even as the years passed, his shadow lingered in court records. By 2020, he still had pending robbery with violence cases in Nairobi and Nakuru. His last known court appearance was on September 21 of that year at Milimani Law Courts. After that, silence. He disappeared from the legal system, but not from the streets, because Daniel was not done. On May 17, 2021, his gang struck in Eastleigh. Their target was a businesswoman known to handle large sums of cash. The robbery was brutal. When she resisted, they shot her in the arm, leaving her injured and terrified. It was reckless, it was brazen, and it was the kind of act that drew attention from the highest levels of law enforcement. This time, they had crossed paths with Eastleigh's most feared cop, Ahmed Rashid. The manhunt began, and Daniel's name was once again at the top of the list. He was no longer just a suspect with pending cases. He was a marked man, hunted by police, feared by rivals, and living on borrowed time. On the morning of June 22, 2021, Daniel Gacumo Ndutire carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. This was just days after his gang had struck in Eastleigh, targeting a businesswoman and stealing large sums of cash. The robbery had been reckless, violent, and brazen, and it had placed Daniel squarely in the crosshairs of law enforcement. The manhunt was already underway. His name was at the top of the list. He was no longer just a suspect with pending cases. He was a marked man. By that afternoon, the net had closed in. Daniel was driving his white Subaru Forester along Thika Road near Spur Mall at Guacairu. The highway was busy, traffic heavy, but the trap was already set. Two men on a motorbike pulled alongside with precision, calm, calculated. In a burst of gunfire, 24 bullets tore through the vehicle. Daniel slumped in his seat as the Subaru rolled to a silent stop. Witnesses froze, stunned by the violence unfolding in broad daylight on one of Kenya's busiest roads. No arrests were made, no suspects named. Media reports framed it as a gang hit. Police said investigations were ongoing. But human rights group Missing Voices KE claimed otherwise. They alleged Daniel was executed by police officers from Ruiru, a targeted killing, another name added to the growing list of men with criminal histories who vanished violently. In the aftermath, his wife insisted he was only a car dealer, a man who had not expressed fear for his life. She declined to share more about him, but police records painted a different picture, a man who had evaded justice time and again. And so, the reign of Nairobi's most wanted robber came to an end. His story was one of contradictions, a businessman and father of four, generous in Juja's nightlife, known for spending freely and entertaining friends, yet also a gang leader who thrived in the shadows, evaded justice time and again, and left behind a trail of robberies bold enough to shock police. But on Thika Road, his luck finally ran out. 24 bullets ended his reign, and questions still remain. Was it justice? Was it revenge? Or was it simply the inevitable end of a man who had lived too long on borrowed time? This has been Dark Hour Docs. Thank you for watching.